Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day's a great day not to be in a cult. It occurred to me that everything that's happening with Linkin Park and Emily Armstrong and the massive amount of comments that I'm seeing in on my videos of, can we get evidence that Emily is still a Scientologist, or some comments saying Emily doesn't support Scientology, she doesn't promote Scientology, and all this kind of stuff, made me realize there's a very valuable conversation that we should have about the difference between an active Scientologist and a Scientologist in good standing. There's also a difference between a Scientologist who's not in good standing and someone who's actually declared a suppressive person. And I want to share with you my personal experience and anecdotes that indicate even someone who's not an active Scientologist is a Scientologist. And even someone who's not in good standing, which Emily is in good standing, but even someone who's not in good standing is still a Scientologist. If Scientology can control you, if you have to do what Scientology tells you to do, you're a Scientologist. And I just want to give you some real examples from my life and my experience of how this has of this subject and how it has impacted my life. And I'm going to start with my brother-in-law. Now, me and my wife are not officially divorced yet. And so as long as we are still married, I'm going to call her my wife. And then when we're divorced, I'll call her my ex-wife. But I know some people get confused when I keep saying my wife, my wife, my wife. My brother-in-law, my wife's brother. My wife, my wife and I, we are out of Scientology officially as of 2014. But her brother, two sisters, mom and dad, and nieces and nephews were all still in Scientology when we got declared suppressive persons. Of my wife's whole family, they are all actual Scientologists except for her brother. Her brother hates Scientology. Now, I'm not telling tales out of school. Even when we were all in good standing with Scientology, Adam, my wife's brother, made it very obvious to everyone how much he hated Scientology. It was not a secret. In fact, when my wife and I left the Sea Organization in 2006, Adam was so openly critical and hostile of Scientology and his parents for doing Scientology and critical of the OT levels that I would write reports on Adam. He knows this. This isn't a secret. I would write reports on Adam and send them into Scientology just so they knew what a bad Scientologist Adam really was. Now, Adam didn't give a shit because Adam absolutely effing hates Scientology. But he was born and raised in Scientology. And as a kid and a young teenager, he was made to do Scientology courses. But as soon as he was old enough to say, I'm not doing this anymore, he stopped doing it. Now, I'm willing to bet a little bit of money that Emily Armstrong might be in that category of Scientologist, where she really hasn't done Scientology in a long time. But I don't know that for sure. I'm just saying I'm willing to put a little bit of money on the fact that that might be the kind of Scientologist Emily Armstrong is. But you're going to see where we're going with this story because it's not good. Okay, so you have Adam. He hates Scientology. His wife hates Scientology. His wife also born and raised in Scientology, parents leading OTs, very wealthy Scientologists in the Vancouver area, siblings in Scientology, parents in Scientology. Adam and his wife hate Scientology, but they're in Scientology. Okay. My wife and I get declared. Her whole family is forced to disconnect from us. Now you might go, okay, well, only a Scientologist would actually abide by Scientology's rules of disconnection, because if you're not a Scientologist, what do you care what Scientology tells you to do? And that is sort of how Adam felt for a while. You see, Scientology snitching culture spares no one. And again, I'm not telling tales out of school. Everything I'm about to tell you, I'm not telling anything that would get Adam in trouble. Scientology already knows all this stuff, which is why I have a story to tell about it. Adam would come over to our house and hang out with us and bring his kids over and all this kind of stuff, because he didn't give an F what Scientology said until his father found out he was doing it. Now, of course, his father can only bring so much pressure to bear upon his son to disconnect from his sister, the son's sister. So what was the real threat brought to bear that made Adam, someone who did not consider himself a Scientologist, someone who was openly hostile and antagonistic to Scientology? What pressure was brought to bear to bring Adam into line? The pressure of enforced familial disconnection as dictated by the international multi-billion-dollar family-destroying human trafficking cult that we call Scientology. So Adam's folks were, his father's since passed, but his mother's still around, were both on OT7 Scientologists. And when the ethics officer at Scientology comes a calling, you have to answer the call. Like, I think it's really easy to underestimate or to not truly appreciate how much control Scientology exerts over its individual members, even its public members, not just its staff members, not just its Sea Org members. So the ethics officer, so once Adam's folks become aware that he's actually still connected to us, they have to go into the ethics officer and turn themselves in. They're basically turning their son in, but they're turning themselves in for being connected to their son, who's antagonistic to Scientology, but connected to their daughter. So they're turning themselves in because what their son is doing is a problem for them in Scientologically speaking. So the ethics officer basically tells his parents, well, you need to tell Adam that if he doesn't disconnect officially from his sister and Aaron and their kids, that you're going to disconnect from them. And of course, they're like, okay, fine. We'll get him to a promise to do that. And the ethics officer says, no. We don't trust Adam. We don't give a damn what he says. We want it in writing. Adam doesn't even consider himself a Scientologist. But his parents come to him and say, you have to sign this form, agreeing in writing that you will not stay connected to Aaron and Heather and their kids, or we're going to disconnect from you. And not only that, you'll be declared a suppressive person. And then your wife will have to decide whether to disconnect from you. And if she picks you, then her folks are going to disconnect from her. Now, in addition to the fact that, Adam loves his family, and I'm sure his wife loves her family, they also happen to be in a position to inherit millions of dollars from their folks. So there's a familial incentive, but there's also a financial incentive to do what the fuck Scientology tells you to do. I'm using this example of my brother-in-law because I've seen so many comments saying, what proof, what evidence do you have that Emily Armstrong is still supporting Scientology? And I almost go, what does the person asking that question think that means? Is there any evidence that she's promoting Scientology? I go, most Scientologists don't promote Scientology. That's not necessarily what's expected of a Scientologist. And it's hard for me not to respond to comments like that in negative ways, because I almost go, what do you mean evidence? You don't understand how Scientology works. The anecdote with my brother-in-law shows how even people who actually hate Scientology and are openly antagonistic to it, if my brother-in-law has to do what Scientology tells him to do, he's a Scientologist. We can argue about the nuance of words and what they mean and when they apply these arguments are largely irrelevant when it comes to what we're talking about here. I've got an even better example for you. Okay, there's a local guy, probably about my age. I'm 43. Morton Myers. There's a local guy named Morton Myers who a couple years ago ran for Clearwater mayor. And he owns a couple local successful businesses. I think Tampa Bay Pawn Shop. He owns the famous local ice cream shop called Dairy Curl. It's been here for generations, but he purchased it not too long ago. He is not a Scientologist, but his parents are Sea Org members at the Flag Land Base in downtown Clearwater. Morton Myers' parents, or at least his mother, but I think both of his parents, worked on the flagship Apollo with Mike Rinder back in the early days of the Sea Organization. Okay. We went to one of the mayoral debates where Morton Myers was participating. Me and Mike Rinder went to the debate. And we went up to him afterwards and said, like, hey, you know, we wanted to know, like, is this dude a Scientologist or what? He definitely seemed a little taken aback at meeting Mike Rinder. But I happened to run into him at the grocery store a little while later. And we stopped and we chatted for a while. Very friendly guy. He's like, nah, man, I'm not a Scientologist. He was just like my brother-in-law, Adam. He's like, nah, yeah, well, you know, I grew up in it and whatnot, but I never really did any courses. And he even called it a cult. And he knew about me. He knew about my channel. He was supportive of the whole thing. And I sort of considered him, well, I considered him a friend. I mean, an acquaintance. You guys know me. I tend to consider everyone a friend, but he was definitely friendly. I considered him an ally. And it was hard to reconcile that with a guy whose parents are literally Sea Org members. And of course, this guy's running for mayor. So the Tampa Bay Times, who's covering the mayoral race, wants to understand, like, is this like a low-key, under-the-radar Scientology agent? And what I would say, you know, what I would comment on at the time is the leverage Scientology wields is the threat of enforced familial disconnection. And when it comes to someone who he said he has a good relationship with his parents, and you go, how's that possible? Sometimes these weird outliers exist. When push comes to shove, if Scientology, particularly if you have a good relationship with your parents and your parents are in Scientology, when Scientology comes a knocking and says you have to do A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z, or you're going to be declared and your parents will disconnect from you, you're going to do what Scientology says. So even though Morton Myers is someone who privately talked with me and talked a lot of shit about Scientology and called it a cult and was supportive of me and my channel and the former Scientology movement and, the Leah Remini Scientology and the Aftermath TV show, once I ran for city council a couple years later after that, who was out there in the press and on social media saying Asmithlevin is a religious bigot and is running a campaign based on hate? Our good old friend Morton Myers. The guy who claimed, no, I'm not a Scientologist. I put that shit behind me as soon as I could. Well, as soon as Scientology came a knocking and said, hey, Morton, we need you to call Asmithlevin a bigot. He did. If you have to do what Scientology tells you to do, you're a Scientologist. Okay, so this is an example of my brother-in-law, Adam, not an active Scientologist. I would argue not even a Scientologist in good standing. But he's not declared a suppressive person. He's not been expelled from Scientology. And he's connected to all of his Scientologist family members. So when Scientology tells Adam through his mother, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you will be disconnected from and disinherited, then Adam's got to do what Scientology says. So in that way, my brother-in-law is a Scientologist, even though he doesn't think that he is, and he hates Scientology. So I realize we're playing a little bit with words, but this entire landscape that I'm trying to describe is how Scientology works, and is why when people go, show me the evidence that Emily still supports Scientology, it's irrelevant. It's absolutely irrelevant. If Emily Armstrong wasn't someone who has to do what Scientology tells her to do, and by the way, I'm being generous. I'm telling you, I believe Emily Armstrong is an actual true believing Scientologist. I'm just being generous and saying it doesn't even matter if she is. It doesn't even matter if she's just one of these reluctant members like my brother-in-law. It means she has to do what Scientology tells her. It means she's under the control of Scientology. Both of Emily Armstrong's parents work, well, her mother works at international management, at the international management base at Golden Era Productions. Emily Armstrong's mother works directly on the lines of David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology. Emily Armstrong has to do what Scientology tells her to do, and she cannot do anything that would make Scientology mad, even if she hasn't actually done any Scientology in years, which I genuinely believe it's actually highly possible. She has not done courses in years. She's not done auditing in years, and it doesn't matter. And I know there's a lot of people who are saying, why should anyone care? Why should anyone care? Linkin Park is free to do whatever they want. Emily Armstrong is free to do whatever she wants. And the fans are free to respond to the information that is being put out there the way that they want. The proof that Emily Armstrong is being controlled by Scientology, has to do what Scientology tells her to do, and can't do anything they don't want her to do, is that her apology didn't even mention Danny Masterson and didn't even mention Danny Masterson's victims. Why? Because that would upset Scientology. That's the reason. Just think about it. How easy would it be if she wasn't under the control of Scientology to just say, I 100% believe Danny Masterson's victims? You go, that's so easy. That's so easy. Why wouldn't she have said it? And why wouldn't Linkin Park management have just said, no, just say that. Just say that. Because she's not allowed. So it's up to Linkin Park's fans to decide if they want to support a member of the band who's being controlled by a cult that doesn't believe in mental illness, that doesn't believe in depression, that believes gay people are aberrated, sick, and evil. It's up to the fans. So you've got active Scientologist, you've got Scientologist in good standing, you've got Scientologist not in good standing, and then you've got an actual declared suppressive person. What would get Emily declared a suppressive person is publicly saying she doesn't support Scientology anymore. I would argue, in my experience and in my opinion, that if Emily came out and condemned Danny Masterson and apologized to Danny Masterson's victims and just said, I believe his victims, I personally believe that would not get Emily declared a suppressive person. I believe she could do that and not really experience any negative effects in Scientology. You know, maybe the ethics officer would call her in and say, hey, you didn't have okay to do that. But she wouldn't, her friends and family wouldn't be forced to disconnect from her. And that's why I think it's very, very fair to set the bar there for show us that you actually mean it. Again, I know there's going to be so many comments. Why does anyone care what you have to say? Nobody has to care what I have to say. I'm just trying to explain the landscape, and I'm trying to explain the outrage, and I'm trying to explain why Emily isn't doing what makes the most sense to do. And I'm trying to basically respond to the comments that are like, show me the proof. Show me the proof. There's no proof, guys. There's no, what do you want? What do you want? Video of Emily sitting in a Scientology course room? Like, by the way, Emily Armstrong's band, Dead Sarah, it's actually all Scientologists. So like, instead of saying, show me the proof she still supports Scientology, I'll say, show me the proof that she doesn't, because she's already known to support Scientology. You know, this is an example where you could prove the negative. You could prove the negative. By the way, do you know the easiest way to dispel any questions about whether you support Scientology? Just put up an Instagram story. It's just as easy as the first apology that you put up. My folks are still in Scientology. I have tons of Scientology friends. I love them to death. I support everyone's right to practice the religion of their choice. But I personally am not a Scientologist anymore, and I don't have anything to do with the organization. Could she say that? Yeah. Would she get in a little bit of trouble for that? Probably. But you know who else did that? Beck. The singer Beck. Beck is even more of a Scientologist than Emily Armstrong ever was. Beck's another guy born and raised in Scientology, extremely successful. And I think it was last year, Beck in an interview was asked about Scientology, and he's like, you know, Scientology was always my parents' thing. I was never really involved. Beck actually married, was it Marissa Ribisi, Giovanni Ribisi's sister? The Ribisis, also born and raised in Scientology. So Beck's one of these guys who, he was a Scientologist. His parents were Scientologists. His sister, Alyssa Swade, is a Scientologist. His wife, Marissa Ribisi, is a Scientologist. His wife's whole family is a Scientologist. And even Beck was actually able to distance himself from Scientology publicly without being declared a suppressive person and being disconnected from. So as much as I have in my previous videos explained sort of the problematic situation that Emily Armstrong's in with regards to Scientology and her family, I can also point you to examples that would indicate she could easily do this if she wanted to. She could easily, if she wanted to, distance herself from Scientology, say the exact same thing that Beck did, actually apologize for supporting Danny Masterson, say she believes he's guilty, and she actually believes his victims. She could do it, which is why I say the reason she doesn't is because she's actually a Scientologist. She's actually a true believer, whether she's active or not. A lot of Scientologists aren't active, you guys. Tons of Scientologists aren't actually active, but still believe in Scientology. She really does, in my opinion, believe the same thing Danny's family believes, which is that this was a setup and Danny really didn't do this, or it's being exaggerated or whatever. And when you see Emily posting videos to social media just in the last couple of weeks of hanging out and laughing with Bijou Phillips, and you know, she's hanging out with Chris Wadhams and Ben Schulman. These are her Scientology friends. These are Danny Masterson's friends. These are her best Scientology friends. So please, with the questions or the demands, show me the proof she still supports Scientology. It's not even really how it works, but I think there is plenty of proof. Show me the proof that she doesn't, and explain why Emily won't do the bare minimum to answer that question herself. Why do we have to answer that question? We've raised the point. We've made the point. We've made our case. If it's so easily for Emily to make liars out of us, then please do it, Emily. Please make liars out of us all. I would celebrate it. All right. That's pretty much all I had to say on this. I have Marilyn in the back office helping me star comments. Thank you so much. Let's run through some of these. Julia O'Connell. Chester was an amazing advocate for drug addiction, mental illness, and victims of SA. Yes. Thorn Hopeful. Would we have a way of knowing if any of the Linkin Park members are Scientologists? My answer to this question would really just be Scientology is such a small world. And it would be such a big deal if any of the members of the band were actually in Scientology other than Emily Armstrong, that I just don't think they could keep that secret. So you say, do we have any way of knowing? I would say there's a 99% chance none of the band members are involved in Scientology. And there's nothing to indicate otherwise. Thank you for the question. Mena says, this has come at a good time. We are all over social media explaining Scientology in detail and why it's not just a religion. Thank you so much. That's great. Moxie 2022. Are any of the members of Linkin Park now in Scientology? Not to the best of my knowledge, and I have no reason to believe that would be true. Infiltrator N7. The thing that bothers me the most about this is the fact that this had to be caught by somebody. You would think so. I don't know how to make it all make sense. Linky Lou, my confusion is with the band itself. Why are they willing to risk everything for her? I'm just guessing they honestly didn't think it was really going to come up. I mean, I truly believe that. I don't think they assessed this risk and was like, yeah, we're willing to take this on. I think they had no idea that that Cedric would come out with this, and he did. Sam Bellini. Emily was at the Pack Ranch and experienced it with me, Miriam, and all the other cadet kids. It would be so helpful if she used her spotlight to speak about it, but currently it seems like she won't. That is such a great point. And also, can we acknowledge the fact that if she were to actually use this opportunity, this moment in time, and this platform that she has to leave Scientology, she'd be a goddamn hero? I mean, look what happened to Leah Remini when she came out with her book and did the Scientology and the Aftermath TV show. She won 2 Emmy Awards. She was celebrated industry-wide. And especially when you have, like, honestly, I mean, the band that she's a part of, what Chester Bennington stood for, what he had experienced in his past, like how much there is in common between what the kids in Scientology were subjected to at the Cadet Org and at the Pack Ranch, the similarities between what those kids were subjected to, and what Chester Bennington went through. Like, if she actually used that platform, she'd be a goddamn folk hero. So I do not have a lot of patience for people trying to make the argument that Emily Armstrong is trapped in Scientology. BS, bogus. She is not trapped. She can stay in if she wants to, but she's not trapped. Acupunk. It's so interesting when people think they have good relationships until they disagree with Scientology. Absolutely. Sylvester Sorn. Have you heard of Hollywood Undead? I heard they were in Scientology. Is that something you're aware of? I'm guessing that's a band. I've never heard of them. I don't know anything about it. Sorry about that. Ada, I'm happy to be able to catch live streams this weekend. Well, I'm happy to have you here, Ada. Thank you for joining. Serge Del Mar. Good to see you, Serge. Once Scientology knows how you really feel by Knowledge Report or YouTube exposure, they get called in to get handled. That's literally what they call it. Yeah, handled. He's got to be handled. Got to call him in. You got to come in for a handling. Is he handled yet? That's what they call it. Annie McDowell, thank you so much for the super sticker. Joe Raz, there's a community post to introduce the new Linkin Park. I scrolled through all the comments. You know they had to scrub the comments clean. Not one mention about this. Yeah, whoever's moderating those social media profiles has their must be working triple overtime right now. Annie McDowell, the evidence is that she's connected to her family. Exactly. And Stacy Wernick, I'd imagine Emily attempting to leave would be difficult if her mother is stationed at the Gold Base, correct? Well, let's make sure we're not conflating two things. So Emily is, of course, not stationed at the Gold Base. To the best of my understanding, it sounds like her mother is. But the thing is, just look at how many executives have left Scientology from the international base. So no one's expecting Emily's mom, Gail Armstrong, to like stage an escape from the base. But let's say Emily were to publicly depart Scientology. Her mother would be handled to either disconnect from Emily, or she herself would be expelled from Scientology. So it's almost like she wouldn't have to escape. Scientology would get rid of her. Now you might say, well, what if they just sort of locked her mother up and prevented her from getting in touch with her daughter? That's just not going to happen, you guys. It's not going to happen. And that's my opinion. everyone is free to have a different opinion. Let's see. Marissa Martin. Yo, what happened to the last Danny Masterson defenders? Ashton, Mila, Francois, all canceled. Guessing Emily isn't above this either. That's why I just think give it a little bit of time. It's my opinion that Linkin Park management will see there's really no other option but to try to put this to rest for good. And if that means saying Danny Masterson's name and apologizing specifically to Danny Masterson's victims, I feel like eventually that's going to happen. I mean, I guess it depends. How bad does the band want Emily Armstrong? How bad do they want to be able to move forward with this and put this behind them? It wouldn't be that hard just to do what I just said. So if the band wants to move forward and they want to get past this, and Emily's not willing to do just this small little thing, that's all the evidence you need that she's a Scientologist. Okay. Fish Mom 2011. The only way to truly free oneself from Scientology is to get yourself declared. Otherwise, they will always have a string to pull to make you dance. True. I would add on top of that, or just don't care if you get declared. Because the leverage comes when they try to threaten the one thing you're holding on to the most, which is the connection. So even if you're not declared, you can still be truly free as long as you don't care if you get declared. But, it's the same point that you're making. Tiff 420. If she had to choose, who do you think she would choose? Scientology or Linkin Park? Ooh. So, oh man, I don't know Emily personally, so I can't claim to know what she values the most. That being said, what makes the most sense to me is that if she had to choose, she would choose Linkin Park. So why do I say that when I say that I don't know her? This career in this industry is what she's been working towards her entire life. I think Emily's only 39 years old. She literally managed to achieve this level of success despite having been one of these child Scientology slaves. It's remarkable. It's admirable. If she's not really a true believer, and I'm saying that I believe that she is, but if she's not, and she's just doing it for the familial relationships, is that worth sacrificing everything you've been working towards professionally your whole career? I mean, Emily is someone who's never going to do Scientology's bridge to total freedom, which is why most people are in Scientology other than not wanting to lose their family. Emily lives as an openly gay woman. You are not allowed to do Scientology's confidential upper levels while living as an openly gay person. So she's clearly not someone who cares about her future of doing Scientology's bridge. She doesn't care about that. So if she cares about Scientology, it's probably the community aspect of it. Well, okay. Are you going to pick that community, which looks down on gay people, doesn't believe in depression, doesn't support mental health, covers up sexual assault of kids? Are you going to support that community over everything you've been working towards your entire life? It's hard for me to believe that she would, but that's why I say I don't actually know her. So that's just my opinion. Hausdorff. I was actually surprised how much pushback she got from the regular Linkin Park fans. Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of Linkin Park fans in my comments saying, move on. She's addressed this. You're a liar, a clickbaiter, and a hater. You should move on. But yeah, it does seem most of Linkin Park fans did push back on this, but it also seemed that a lot of them were also quite willing to accept Emily's non-apology as an actual apology. And it's not going to make this go away because it's not an apology. Michael Sorensen, what apology? It's already gone from her Instagram. Exactly. If I had not done videos about this, well, and I guess her apology was republished in the media, but if nobody had even reported on her apology, there'd be no evidence it existed. It existed on her Instagram stories for 24 hours and then it was gone. Serge Delmar, Emily can't relate to Chester's lyrics, is so hypocritical. It's true. Meniscus, thank you for the super sticker. Kathy Ann, keep in mind, her beliefs mean Chester pulled in his mental health struggles, SA as a child, and suicide. That's doctrine. Yeah. SP Pillow Talk, I believe she has been forced to lock her emotions so far down out of fear of being punished that she has become a robot. All righty. Mary James says the victims of abuse in Scientology have the balls to speak up. So can you, Emily. Yeah. Christina Nicole, do you think the name of Danny Bronson Island Records has anything to do with the Celebrity Center being on Bronson in Hollywood? Oh, did Danny Masterson have Bronson Island Records? That's a good question, Christiana. I don't know. I'd never heard of that before. I mean, like, I forgot that he had some sort of a record label that was called that. Yeah, I don't know. Probably someone out there who knows. Old Frizz, Aaron and chat. Check out Kellycopter's cover of Numb. It's beautiful and heartbreaking. Oh, that's awesome. Scottish Scouser. Why didn't the band see this controversy happening? Surely they must have had an inkling of her Scientology background, especially being so close to Cedric. Oh, I don't think she was so close to Cedric. Cedric did the purification rundown in Scientology, which is like the very first action that you do on Scientology's bridge. And they put Emily in the sauna with Cedric while they did the purif, but they weren't twins. Like on the purification rundown, you have a twin that you do the program with. I don't think, I'll double check this. I'm going to have this wrong. I'll correct it in the future. I don't think they were twins. I think she was just, when they put people in the sauna, it's not like they don't just put one twin ship in. Those are a bunch of people in there at the same time. And I think Emily was just someone who was on the purif at the same time that Cedric was. So I wouldn't say they were close. I don't think Cedric has ever said they were close, but that's how he knew who Emily was. It's one of the ways he knew who Emily was. And so, yeah. Okay, let's see. REM Arts. She doesn't have to say anything, and no one is forcing her to, but there are consequences for not speaking out. No decision is in itself a decision. Yep. Susie G. This story was on the Tampa News this morning. It's not dying down. Oh, wow. I don't even have cable. Susie, if you don't mind, can you send me a link? If there's a video showing what was said this morning, can you send me a link to growingupinscientology@gmail.com? I would appreciate it. Steelers Princess, fans need to protest the Linkin Park's concert this Wednesday at the Forum, Los Angeles. I would not be surprised if people showed up for that. Macht mich doch egal. They are dishonoring Chester, and that alienates. I think that really is what it comes down to. I think that really is why the fans are so outraged. Because of the complete contradiction of what Emily believes and supports and what Chester advocated for and supported and what he went through. And I think that really is where the outrage is coming from. All right, everyone. That is it for now. I might do something later this evening. We'll see. Maybe, maybe not. But hit that subscribe button if you haven't, guys. Hit that like button if you don't mind. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.